I'm watching this generation with fascination because their experience is different than ours in so many ways, and it's
Yes.
interesting to see how their lives are like in what ways and what different choices they're making. I don't want to shit on them because I hated people shitting on millennials. So Zoomers, you keep rocking.
Happy Inauguration Day, Sean.
Happy Inauguration Day, Dan. It's a frosty one out there. I hope you have your booties on, as they say in Groundhog Day, I think.
How frosty is Houston getting?
We are in the 30s, mid-30s, expecting to get down into the teens overnight, and up to 6 inches of snow has been forecasted between now and sometime tomorrow.
So when Southeast Texas gets snow, what happens?
It depends. Usually, as long as we have power, it's not so bad. Like we had a storm a few years back, made a lot of news. People probably heard about Winter Storm Imelda, I believe it was, where we were down in the single digits across a large swath of the state, and the grid couldn't keep up, and we had a lot of failures on the power grid, and that caused chaos because people's pipes were bursting and getting things brought back online.
Houses aren't constructed for it. They're like water heaters are in the garage.
Yeah.
An unheated garage.
Or in an attic that's poorly insulated, or, now it's pretty standard for everybody to put in like PEX piping, the expandable polymer piping that if it freezes, it doesn't, rupture. That's more typical nowadays.
Microplastics.
Yeah, microplastics, exactly. Yeah, so that's what we're up to with the weather in Houston. You still single digits up there?
-7, I think, right now.
Oh, God.
I don't know that we get above 0 today.
That's
still high. And that's with sun out, kind of, behind a very wispy, thin layer of cloud. And there was a dusting of snow, so I've already shoveled once today.
Fun. Good cardio.
Yeah.
Got your cardio in the sub-zero.
If anybody lives in a place where they have snow to shovel, I made a purchase this year. And it was not an expensive purchase. And it was one of the best purchases. And it's called, in a very PC way, Manplow. It is like a 46-inch wide snow shovel.
I'm Googling
and for
this.
anything
Manplow?
that's like 3 inches or less, for all snows that are like 3 inches or less, I used to spend like an hour shoveling my driveway. It's a wider driveway. And now I can get it done in like 10 minutes, as long as there's not a lot of snow to pick up, because I really do like 7 swipes instead of like 36.
Oh, I was expecting to be one of the shovels that have kind of like the Y-shaped handle, so you have better leverage. But this is just literally you're just
like
brute force.
Brute force. So even on the bigger snows, I'll still open the driveway up with the Manplow and then take the smaller like pickup shovel to the edges.
Mm-hmm.
It's still way faster. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense, I suppose. All right.
And as long as you're not digging out from like a foot plus, like it's way faster than.
Okay, well, there's Dan's ringing endorsement for Manplow.
Yeah,
check it out.
Hopefully their sales tick up.
If it does, it's probably just due to the weather, Dan. Let's not be full of ourselves.
Was it Dan Atke or was it the weather?
Right.
Yeah.
So we wanted to talk about something that's been on our radar lately in terms of listening content, right? Do we want to dive into this?
Say more? I forgot.
A couple of months ago, this podcast came out and came across our radar.
Right. Yeah.
Called the Telepathy Tapes. And I've been thinking about how to talk about this. And I think the way I want to talk about it is just to say, first off, I recommend that you check it out. It is a very well done, well produced show. Think Serial, for those of you who remember the Serial phenomenon back from, what was that, probably 8 years ago, 10 years ago at this point. That very much tone and kind of journalistic voice brought to a kind of sensitive topic in a way around basically those that grew up with autism and reports that have amassed over the years that are coming to light of, I think, kind of reaching that critical mass of reporting where there's enough reports where it's hard to say, well, this isn't a thing and we shouldn't give this any credence at all. But basically, of those individuals that have autism, I'm reticent to say suffered from or inflicted with, suffering from or inflicted with, but that experience autism have, with their closest people that they help them, their teachers, their parents, developed an ability to speak without speaking, for lack of a better word. And hence the name of the podcast, the Telepathy Tapes. And the host, Kai Dickens, does a wonderful job of interviewing all of these parents and all of these professional caregivers and teachers that have these just out of these world reports. They do a number of basically trials, tests, where they actually test this ability by keeping the parent in one room and showing the parent a number, and then in the other room, the autistic child on a letterboard will hit, that number, with off of a random number generator, things that would be, seemingly difficult to do if this didn't have any credence to it. And for me, it's something that this supernatural realm has always been something of interest to me since I was a little kid and the X-Files were around, I think. And so I've always had
a soft spot.
A soft spot, yes, but I'd like to consider myself relatively skeptical overall. But this podcast has just blown my mind in the detail they've gone into, and I'm having a difficult time remaining skeptical. I'm still skeptical, I think, and there's a potential that this is, it's one show right now. It's there's some good audio and good video on their website. You can go of them actually seeing some of these experiments, tests kind of conducted to help validate the.
Have you watched much?
Just a couple. Just watched two of some of the trials of again, it was like with the child and parent split into different rooms, different areas, not able to visually make communication, and apparently being able to demonstrate some sort of a telekinetic link or a telepathic link.
Are the autistic kids tapping completely unhelped, or are they being helped to tap out the letters?
In the one I saw, the one in particular that I'm specifically remembering, they were not being touched. Nobody was contacting physically the, is it Hunter? I think it was the Hunter. Nobody was physically contacting him. And he was tapping out, showing essentially what they described in the podcast. I just had to go see it for my own eyes, right? So, I mean, I'll say, having, listened to the podcast and seen a couple of videos, it's like, okay, I feel like they're doing a pretty accurate representation with what they're saying. That's the base layer, right? I think it's just holy crap, this is hard to refute with, I shouldn't say refute, because I don't know if it's hard. It's both hard to refute and hard to prove, right?
Yeah, and hard to accept.
Yeah, and hard to accept.
Depending on who you are, or like where your priors are.
And so I think it's just a fascinating little layer that we're maybe science is ready to explore. That's where I kind of want to take the discussion, is I think that science might be getting ready to explore more in depth what consciousness truly is. And I think we've been, scientists and psychologists and psychiatrists have long studied and wanting to understand consciousness better. But I wonder if with discoveries like this, maybe some acceptance of what's going on here and further deeper study of what's going on, maybe we're able to start to unlock new understanding around what consciousness truly is. And my take is just the whole thing is mind-blowing, and you should go listen to it, because we're not going to be able to adequately summarize, I think, everything that happens. I think
that's, but not only is that accurate, but I think it's more meaningful to actually consume the material sort of serially.
Mm-hmm.
Might go from there. Yeah. I am with Sean on this one. Like it was this sort of blew my mind. I find it hard to accept, but I also find it hard not to take as is. I don't, other than like a few people who are like, well, the spellers, they refer to the kids who use these mechanisms to tap out letters in order to communicate. They call them spellers. And other than like some, what do you want to call it? Not adult, but like people like us assisting the spellers in tapping out their responses. Other than that, I'm not getting a whole lot of like refutations that make sense. The rest of it just seems like skeptics who are clinging to being skeptical.
And that's one thing that they do spend, I think, an episode discussing is the use of spelling in this community has not always been accepted as a way of communication, and that people, one of the messages that one of the mothers delivers that I think is very powerful is we need to start assuming competence, and that these people that are again,
There's more substance to these.
yeah, well, and that the people that are spelling and communicating this way actually have a lot more knowledge and are a lot more intelligent than people give them credit for. And when you let them tap into that ability, they can really wow everybody with how brilliant they are and what they know. And then it's interesting to think about how much they might know what they know. And the podcast gets into that in some interesting depths, because some of it seems impossible that they would know it, but yet
like people becoming best friends, but having never met in real life and living on opposite sides of the country,
or being able to consume a book without ever actually having physically opened it up.
Right.
And it relates to some of the nature of the savant nature of those people who have head trauma and then just all of a sudden can play piano. There's some hypothesizing they do around that point that I think is kind of intriguing, and adds again, I think, more when you start to look at the larger layer that they build out of. It's this, starting off with this one thing that is this communication between autistic children and their teachers or parents, and then to this greater sense of these greater areas of phenomenon that we have proof of existing, like the savant type situation where, again, people, have some sort of a trauma or an experience and then can speak different languages or do, things that they never could before, and how that all might tie together. I think it starts to build a more interesting web and a more like, it builds a more firm foundation that, okay, there's something larger going on here that's interlinking these different phenomenon, perhaps.
There's a there.
Yeah. Well said.
I don't know if it's well said, but it like cuts to the weird chase that is very hard to put the words. Have you listened to much of Sam Harris talk about consciousness? How does he refer to it? Like the unsolvable, or?
I have not. No, Sam Harris.
It makes me want to go back and listen to a bunch of his stuff, just on consciousness, not any of the other stuff. Just in relation to telepathy tapes, like just listen to him talk about consciousness, and spend more time going back and re-relating to material that I've already listened to.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing about McGilchrist in a way, kind of wanting to go back and re-explore that tome, The Master and His Emissary, with this in mind. It's something I've been kind of wanting to re-explore anyway.
You gotta get that in the PDF version and upload on Claude, and then just ask Claude questions.
The thing is, I don't know what questions I want to ask until I go through it again. I think what I need to do is go listen to it again, hit my bookmarks, and then go find my bookmarks in the PDF and say, okay, these are my questions. Because right now I don't even know what questions I have. Yeah, I don't even know what questions I would have. I do eventually want to try to tackle his latest work, which is something like 800 pages or 900 pages, but I don't know that I'll ever have the guts to actually do that.
Guts, or for me, it's like attention span.
That's true.
I know I could put it on and I could like check the box, but it would be like, it's summertime. I've got the book running in my headphones while I run. I've gotten through the book. Did it go into my brain? Like maybe a quarter of it,
I think that's a lot of reading and consuming of anything, really, is like how much of it do you actually absorb, right? The comprehension and retention is what's important. And if you're not, it
can be fleeting.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just hard to keep your mind quiet enough to actually focus on something, because you start thinking about, for me at least, when I start thinking applications or thoughts tangent thoughts that come up, and then I forget that the last 3 pages I read, I didn't actually absorb a bit of it.
Yes.
That happens to me way too frequently. I don't know how to.
I'm like, how is it even possible? How could I have read this last page? Because I don't remember. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But that's when your brain is in two places, and I'm like, there's like that could be a useful thing if it was like harnessed correctly. But instead, the way it manifests for me, at least, is like I was in two places at once, and basically they both don't count now. Right?
That's true. Yeah, and neither of them matter now. Like I got nothing out of either place my mind was for that 2 minutes I just spent not really paying attention to what I was reading and not really thinking. Yeah.
Because the other thing was also fleeting. It was gone. Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, so that's been on my mind heavily for the last couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to them coming out with season 2, and I think they're going to put out some sort of a video documentary as well. They did a little teaser for those future plans. Looking forward to seeing how that grows, but I want everybody to go out and experience listening to that particular podcast just so we can see what it does to other possible skeptics out there, because I feel like people that would be inclined to listen to us probably tend to be a little more skeptical, and wow, it definitely messed with my perception. So check it out.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then you get to the last episode of season 1.
Yeah, in their own words. Yeah. That was powerful. Like what the spellers were communicating and saying, I think.
Did it change the way you want to approach anything in your life?
I don't know if it changed the way I want to, but I think it will change the way I do.
Say more.
Like, I don't know, like now just like thinking about this is more of a possibility. Like in a way, this is in some ways what they're talking about towards the end is a lot of, very much spirituality, and it gets into a very metaphysical place of what are our beings after we die? Where do we go? Do we go somewhere? And there are tales and stories of that. Yes, we do. And that these people have these powers, for lack of a better word, are able to go to this place that they call the hill. And on the hill, frequently, they are visited by former loved ones that they've lost or people from the past. And time is a flat circle. And that's what's mind melting about it, right? If they're to be believed, then this is like the closest we've in a way had to any evidence of an afterlife. Odd. Like it's almost the closest thing to hard, tangible, like eyewitness testimony.
The moment we use words to describe this, I think it
loses meaning.
Poisons. Yeah. Well, loses meaning, or it poisons the meaning, because like as soon as I said the word God, there is a certain percentage of people that felt one way, a certain percentage of people that felt another way, and so on and so forth down the line and the different permutations, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I think is trying to be conveyed here is not necessarily the God, a God, more of a power, thing, black hole.
Like one thing that comes up in the one thing that comes up is simulation theory, right? And is this all like that we're experiencing just like a simulation of consciousness, like in some sort of a weird computer or something?
Right. Yeah.
Was Douglas Adam right? Is 42 the answer we're just trying to get to?
Yes, 42 universes.
I never thought about it that way. That seems far too narrow a number given the infinite improbability drive. But
42 infinities.
There you go. I'll buy. Okay. Well, and if you think about like then, okay, let's say that this is somewhat, this is true, right? And it also would relate to, in a way, what we heard about in the 70s about the CIA and remote viewing experiments. It could be somehow tie in with that. And like, if it's true, is imagine that if Trump listened to this podcast, how many months before we have a Department of Precogs sitting there trying to predict crime or something? Like, what are the weird things that could, like terrible things that could spin off of this is kind of what worries me somewhat.
Okay, so we moved to terrible, but what are the good things?
Okay, the good things would be a greater, deeper understanding probably of what we are, how to communicate better with other people, understanding our own consciousness. I don't know what the benefits of that would be for me. I would think that it would make
higher level of interconnectivity with things that are still yet unknown.
Yeah.
I think for me, it was like, going back to meditative practices and stuff like that, like loving kindness, gratitude. I mean, those were two words that like kept coming back for me. Some of these people who had this connectivity to this other thing, whatever it is, there seemed to be this undercurrent of everything being on a spectrum of love, loving kindness, gratitude. And I guess if these people are able to tap into a different, higher level, more interconnected channel of consciousness, then my takeaway was I need to get better at practicing loving kindness and gratitude and try to get closer to that channel.
Mm-hmm. That tracks. It makes me wonder if, then is that what Buddhist monks are really about in a way that we don't understand? Like them reaching Dharma is reaching this higher plane of consciousness where they're connecting with this hill, this, where they're seeing.
Yeah. Enlightenment is arriving at the
Yeah,
hill.
enlightenment.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, what does, yeah. So another layer that makes me think that, okay, there's been this other thing that's been going on for thousands of years that people have said, and like maybe us Westerners don't think that's woo, and we don't have much faith or put much faith or credence in it, but maybe there's more truth to it than we've ever been willing to admit, and maybe this is evidence of that we should be open to that line of thinking more so than we
So
have
hard.
been.
Yeah.
So yeah,
The rationals of us have difficulty.
yeah, the podcast has made me ask a lot of questions, which is something I wanted to do this year. So it's a good way to start off, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. What is there something you think you're going to take out of it that you carry with you into how it impacts your interaction with life, your lens that you're
Be more positive.
be more positive?
Yeah. Again, it tracks with like the things that I already set forth for myself a little bit this year was more optimism, more positivity, more believing. I kept, like in some prior episodes here, I used the word manifestation or manifest a lot. And there's a lot of woo attached with that word. But I think what I'm trying to do is be, I'm self-confessed for rationalist, threw God away a long time ago kind of person. And I don't know what to do with any of this. I don't know how it'll change me over the long run. But I think instead of being like clinically cold with how I think about certain things, being a little bit more warm. And language is extremely imperfect for me to try to explain how I feel about all this. But there's like because even saying this out loud, it makes me feel like I just explained myself like a robot for the past decade. And that's not how I feel about myself or how I conducted myself in this world.
Mm-hmm.
But there is an aspect of this like rationality, cold, scientific method sort of approach that is like absolutely valid so much in so many ways. However, what if this other thing is a thing and I've thrown the baby out with the bathwater sort of thing, right? Where it's like, actually, you can have both. You can have the scientific method, you can have rationality, but you also are connected to this thing, this channel, this river, and you've been actively plugging your ears to it. And maybe I want to unplug a little bit. That's so imperfect. I don't know how to say it. Yeah.
I think I hear you. I think I understand what you're saying in that. Yeah, because it's more comforting to feel like and that you have it figured out and explained, and that which is what our rational brains are doing in the embrace of the scientific method and testing and questioning. But the scientific method itself is a method of questioning, right? It's not a method of is to continue to ask questions and say, well, is that proof? Does that stand up to trial and error? Like, if I think this is my hypothesis, this is my hypothesis, let me come up with a trial that tests it. And okay, it stood up to that. And only after many, 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 many trials does a hypothesis be, proven out and ever become a law. Even you have to disprove all the counter arguments. And so again, as we said earlier, one thing about this concept of telepathy and this higher plane of consciousness is that it's, to date, we have not had any good ways to prove or refute it in such that our rational brains will allow us to say, if we can't test it, then therefore it must not be able to exist if we can't test it, right? Like, it can't exist. We can't test it, therefore it can't exist.
Are we edging into areas of science that are like this though? Like in quantum or
I think so.
like neutrons, or what are the particles that just like
quarks or no? Neutrinos? No.
Neutrinos, the ones that just like go through. They just go through. It's like what's we're still trying to like measure and understand those things, and why do they exist, and what are they doing, and
yes. Right? And as we've built our technology smaller in a way, like with our chips that we're able to get more processing power out, we're able to start analyzing data on the massive amounts of data you need to be able to actually analyze to be able to figure out what's going on in this small scale. It's interesting that the smaller we can make things, the smaller we can then see in a way. The processing power we're developing is allowing us, I think, to get a much better modeling of what's going on these small scales and help us understand how some of the things behave. Not that we actually understand what they're doing, but we can at least start to understand their behavior. And
what about the things that we don't understand, that we don't even know how to pay attention to? We have not opened our eyes to them, or we don't have the right instrumentation to understand. So like when we think about a universe, we want it to be like our universe. What if the next universe over is like infinitesimally small compared to ours? And then the other one around the block is infinitesimally bigger than the one that.
That's good. That's an interesting thought. Never thought about that.
So like as you go down into an electron, is there another world inside that electron?
I mean, Men in Black asked this hard question, if I recall correctly, at the end of that movie.
I'm moving to Hollywood. movie.
No, exactly. Like, do we understand? Like, how do we understand how things scale? Like, is it like you could zoom in and it's fractal, and as you go fractally in, it just opens up another layer, or same zooming out, like, and all this layer makes up some much bigger layer. That's an interesting thought.
Infinite gifts, right? It's just like you just keep going down, or keep going up, or whatever. And
that's a trippy thought.
You heard it here first.
Yeah. And if that's the case, then we are definitely part of a computer. I'm absolutely positive we are just part of a computer, if that is the case. And I'm okay with that. I guess it's been fun. You know?
Yeah.
Would you change
anything if you knew 100% sure it was a simulation? Would you change your life?
I mean, I think you'd have to, just by the.
No, you don't have to. Lots of people wouldn't.
Yeah, it was a simulation. If it was a simulation, man, you could get real dark and be like, nothing matters. This is just a simulation. I'm just gonna screw it. I'm gonna just drink like a fish all day and play video games or something. I don't know. Like, yeah, or well, no, because in the simulation you still have laws that they apply to the simulation. Like, I'd go try to step off of a building knowing that gravity's not real, but that's not really how a simulation works.
Well, until you become Neo and can bend the actual.
Yeah. Until you're actually, you can see the matrix, right?
Right.
You can not be able to understand that there's a matrix, but unless you can actually see it, it doesn't do you any good.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if the matrix is still being applied to you.
Yeah, then Joey Pants' character has it right about just this steak tastes just as good as anything else. You know, don't care that it's not real. It tastes real.
Yeah, my lived experience says.
So were the Wachowskis thinking about all this when they came up with the Matrix? I wonder.
Let's have them on.
Yeah, let's. Do you have their number? I think I lost it.
I haven't heard about them in a long time.
Yeah. Well, it's because The Matrix 3 came out and then people gave up, I think.
I don't think I ever saw it.
Yeah, right? Because why bother after the second one? It clearly wasn't going anywhere good. So.
Can't remember the second one. I can't tell you if I saw the second one.
All I remember about the second one is there was a fight scene on the freeway that was the big deal for that one. But that's all I remember about it.
Most people just like looked at the action. They didn't ask the questions about what was actually being told.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's science fiction. That's what science fiction does. Is it takes just put something into an allegory and set in the future, set in a different space and time that allows you to embrace it through the view of just having a story told to you and not having to think deeply about it, though that can say something very deeply if you actually do explore the depths. I guess it's all science fiction and fantasy writing, really.
Blade Runner 2049.
You mentioned that. How'd that sit with you?
Now that we appear to be getting a lot closer to AGI and Jensen's talking about like robots and stuff, I was like, interesting. Interesting. Oh, yeah.
So will we develop robots to be humanoids because that's what we've always thought of? Or is that like just... Like I was thinking about that, and like in these worlds where we're developing these robots, why make them so human?
Because so much of our built world is for humans, so they would plug and play? Question mark. I mean, if you're building highly specialized robots that like do one particular thing on a factory floor, you can't easily repurpose that thing. But if it was a human, no.
Mm-hmm.
With highly tactile, fingers and thumbs and all that kind of stuff.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I just when I see movies of the future and they make everything Yeah, they make everything exactly. Like, why would C-3PO be? I don't know. R2-D2 seemed much more utilitarian compared to C-3PO, but I guess.
Well, he was. He was a little like co-pilot.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
and
Whereas C-3PO was like a diplomat.
yeah, true.
Translator, dude.
But if he was diplomatic droid. Why couldn't you just need all you need is something like a phone? Really, it doesn't have to have a.
Well, yes, but this was in the 70s. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fun to see how George Lucas would reimagine some of those things now. If it would,
It would be, because then why wouldn't you would have a phone and you would have like your LLM running on the phone, and C-3PO's right there with you all the time, and you could just like cast C-3PO up to whatever,
Mhm.
and then in the X-Wing, you just plug your phone in, and then you've got R2-D2 running.
Exactly. Yeah, that's just cast C-3PO. Yeah, cast your diplomatic droid to whatever screen it needs to be on. Right? You don't need this big bulky like.
Or space. Yeah, they had those little like like when Princess Leia's being cast up in this hologram.
Yeah, exactly. That would be. I mean, we're almost to that today, right? I think.
I think so. If it weren't for sunshine, yeah.
Yeah. So we're getting
But
close
you don't
to.
have to worry about all that sunshine when you're on a Star Destroyer.
That's true. It's a little darker. Well, it can be, I guess.
Can be, yes.
Well, I mean, if you're on a Star Destroyer right off the coast of Earth, I mean, you'd be able to see the sun. Why would it be any darker than on the face of the moon if you had windows, or on the surface of the Earth if you had windows?
Yeah, but we're all plebes in the Empire, right? We don't have windows.
That's true. We're deep inside the belly of that giant. Yeah, it'd be like being on the inside of a shitty room on a cruise liner, where interior
Yes.
room. No, yeah, you're right. It would be dark. It'd be LEDs, just
LEDs for days, yeah.
LEDs for days. I mean,
You're just wishing for 10,000 lux.
I don't think people are built for this, and I think that if we try it someday, it's not going to go particularly well the first time.
I was thinking about this while watching Blade Runner. It was the other thing that popped in my head. I was like, all these like star post-apocalyptic on Earth or in space kind of things. And it's like, I don't think these human bodies are doing all that great with no access to sunshine. I think this is a big problem. And maybe why all these stories are so dark. Literally, figuratively.
Mm-hmm.
The sun goes away and humans get more evil.
That's true. The circadian rhythm does a lot for us. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Half the health influencers are telling you to like go out and nearly stare at the sun as soon as you wake up.
well, I mean, I'll say like when the sun comes up, I naturally just wake up then now. Like that, like I'm up with it at this point. It used to be we could sleep past it, but now,
Yeah.
but now no, I for some reason like the sun's up, but I'm up. I'm like, okay, let's go. But like if my alarm goes off before the sun's up, those are like
That's what makes winter hard.
yeah. I don't function well. So I think I personally would go insane on a ship deep in outer space. But maybe, I guess, if you had enough, simulated light and UV light, maybe you could get through it. But I don't know. Maybe, and they'd have like a sun deck. You can go take a stroll and see the actual.
This sounds nice.
Whatever.
You think the Empire would do that for us?
Maybe the Republic. I don't know. Yeah, that's. I'll be with my allegiance with everyone who has the best fringe benefits, please.
I'm going to chime into Natalie and see what she can do for us.
Yeah. I was thinking there was this book called Galapagos by Vonnegut, in which he had a device he called the Mandarax device. And it was basically an iPhone. He described an iPhone. And it was like 1956. It was like this little handheld device that it could it could be a universal translator. It could teach you the art of ikebana, Japanese flower arrangement. You could look anything up on it. He was describing a phone.
And the internet.
And the internet, yeah.
We could build the phone, but if it was still prior to the internet, then a lot of what you're saying still doesn't exist,
true.
right?
That's true. Yeah, you're right. He was imagining, he was imagining something deeper, but I don't, without describing
system.
it. Yeah. I'm just thinking about science fiction that comes true. Like, eventually, if we write about it, then it seems like we try to make it true as humans. If we say...
Yeah, which is why, we need more, that's not a question, this is a statement. We need more positive sci-fi. What happened to this seems all so dark now. And is that affecting the broader psyche and media cycles?
Maybe.
and
Well,
therefore outcomes, right? Like if everyone believes the economy sucks, it's gonna suck sooner.
yeah,
We will manifest that
you're right.
as a hive mind,
Yeah, we'll stop spending, which will cause you can create a
and
cycle.
it slowly snowballs into it. Yep.
Yeah. So okay, so I'm trying to think of some positive sci-fi examples. Like, give me some examples that when you say positive sci-fi, what leaps to Dan's mind?
I need the internet.
That's all right. I'm trying to think of like positive examples in science fiction or fantasy. Well, to me, Vonnegut was somewhat positive sci-fi.
Mm. Yeah, like in the belief in humanity.
And I'd say like as much as he is science
Douglas
fiction.
Adams.
Yes, that's a good one.
The Martian.
Okay, I like it.
I love The Martian.
Yeah, that was great movie. I said I need to read it. I still need to do that.
Project Hail Mary is right up there too. Same author, Andy Weir.
Yes, I have that on my list thanks to you, actually. I've seen it on my wish list there, waiting to be queued up. What other sci-fi have I really loved that had a positive? I guess I don't read a lot of sci-fi now that that's coming.
I don't read a ton of sci-fi, but I do like it. But I think a lot of it, at least the newer stuff that seems to like find me, is dark. And like
Star Trek was overwhelmingly kind of positive sci-fi, right?
Yes.
That was a very positive.
I mean, someone would really try to spin that into like, well, they were colonialist or something, but
they weren't. No, they weren't. They were expressly were not colonialists. That was part of the Prime Directive. God dang it. I will defend against that.
God. Yeah, I agree with you, but just people get all bent out of shape.
They were scientists. They were on science missions looking for expanding our knowledge and understanding.
Why Spock was there, man.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, of course, Star Wars, I guess, is kind of positive sci-fi, like fighting space Nazis, right? That was more of an allegory for World War II than anything, or at least that's the way it felt.
Yeah, so maybe my complaint is unfounded.
Well, everything we just referenced was older. I don't know if we referenced anything that's relatively modern, other than maybe the Martian. The film was
other than the Martian
8 years ago. I mean, that's still not
8 years ago.
I don't know. I'm guessing, but it feels like it was about 8, mid-teens. We got to remember we're in 2025.
2011.
Okay, sorry, that hurt.
Sounds 40, and he's still.
Like
Project Hail Mary was 2021.
Okay. That's nice and current, really.
I want to hang out with Andy Weir. He lives in California. His next book, Artemis, is available now. Lifelong space nerd and devoted hobbyist of subjects such as relativistic physics, orbital mechanics, and the history of manned spaceflight. I mean, he probably lives like next door to JPL or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something I can think of that I've read recently that would maybe even come close to qualifying. Okay, well, that's a genre maybe worth exploring and seeing what exists more of. I've grown to like sci-fi more, and even some high fantasy more. In the older I've gotten, appreciating it as literature forms. I think when I was younger, I didn't resonate with me. I don't know why. It just never clicked.
Same. I've been reconnecting more with it now. Have you heard of Jeff Vandermeer? Have I mentioned him before? Author?
The name sounds familiar, but I couldn't tell you a thing about it. I don't know.
Vandermeer. That's Florida or something. Let's see here. Annihilation, Absolution, Authority, Acceptance. Anyway, I read this series by him. 4 novels. He's written a lot. I mean, just go to his website here, jeffvandermeer.com. I think you will like his art. Nothing else. But anyway, yeah, check out the books. They're sort of sci-fi. One of them was made into a movie. But they are they're out there. I don't know. They were fun little adventure stories with weird stuff that happens along the way. Area X, the Southern Reach series. That's the one that I read.
Okay. I like a good series. I got to be honest, because life is just, there's time to fill. So it's nice to have a lot to fill it with. So a series is definitely a good way to do that. No, I don't know. I feel like the authors can really get into the characters and develop much better over if you give them 3-4 books. You get a better story, and you end up feeling much more attached to the characters than if just a single book.
Like a really good TV series instead of one movie. You get to watch 2 seasons of 8 episodes. It's like 3 or 4 movies.
Yeah, like a book is good. Like if you want to have the event is the important thing, but if the characters are the important thing, then the series is, I think, the way to go. It depends what you're. I mean, that's not patently true, but
Yeah, I get you.
yeah. Anyway,
All right. I've got a tweet that came across me that I thought was humorous, and I'm going to share it with you. Yeah. Totally switching subjects here. Being generationally sandwiched between people who had their brain rotted by cable news and TikTokers who can't read is going to make for an absolute nightmare era.
I mean, I think we're being. What are the reactions to that? I bet. Did I get a lot of comments that get ratioed or?
I have to go look again. It has 107 comments, 1,000 retweets, 33,000 likes, and 1.3 thousand.
That's a heck of a. That's good response right there. That's what you want.
Yeah.
Like nobody pushing back, relatively speaking.
All right.
That's an interesting way to take an interesting take on what the millennials are experiencing.
Interesting take.
I think we're probably shitting a little bit too much on the Zoomers,
well,
but
both sides.
Yeah, and also when you think about how many people actually really do truly watch cable news that much, it's like 5-8% of the population. It's not like, or even of the boomer generation, it's a more of a minority than we give it credit for, I think. I don't know. But yeah, cable news, man. What were we thinking? That lasted for a while, and it still lasts. I mean, it's still going on, but I don't know as many people that watch it. My parents still, from there, tune in to CNN or MSNBC or Fox, and they rotate around. So I'm like, okay, you're bouncing around. I don't care. Whatever. I mean, I don't care if you weren't.
The bouncing around is the important.
Yeah, I like the bouncing around. Yeah. Good on you. Don't just listen to one thing and nothing else. Yeah. But yeah, like cable news feels like it's losing relevance quickly. I mean, it has been, I think. But with TikTok going away, that's not going to help anything. That flow is just going to go to some other platform where something new comes up. It's not going to go back to cable news. I don't know. I feel like the people that watch it, I think it's like niche. I feel like it's a very niche thing. Like it's
cable news.
Yeah, like right. Like I mean, the audiences for each relative show network are all like that. Like people tune into the echo chamber they want to listen to for an hour and then tune out. It's not that they're like growing their audiences or really even like, I wonder how much they're even spreading ideas, like useful ideas at this point. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Okay. Well, the thing that, how do I want to say, like, it seems that at least there was a time, and maybe this was driven by COVID, but maybe it's still like true today or whatever, that the journalists, let's call them reporters, live on Twitter because all the news is being broken and released and everything's happening on Twitter first, basically. And then it gets upcycled into the news. And obviously that's not the way it used to be. And I think that's been another dynamic that has also changed the news in ways that we're still having trouble like disentangling. And those who aren't like already connected to Twitter, like anything that's on cable news is almost old to me.
No,
because it's already gone through 8 to 16 hours worth of like
being on social media, people talking about it, getting reactions of seeing people's hot takes and cold takes simultaneously.
And since I'm reading rather than watching, the information density that I've received on Twitter was much higher than anything that would ever appear on a 35-second slot on Facebook.
Absolutely. Like it's the and now this syndrome that you get from watching news. It's like we're moving from this and now this, which is just a meaningless transition to say we're moving on to something else. We were just watching this thing about a murder. Now we're going to watch this story about a puppy coming down from a tree. But we know like, your brain doesn't know how to handle that transition. So and now this.
Yeah.
It's infotainment. It's not actual.
It's infotainment, yeah. Well, this goes back to amusing ourselves to death.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I think that's where I believe I stole that from amusing ourselves to death. I'm not mistaken. Everything I just said there. So I should credit Neil Postman with that take.
Yeah.
But yeah, so good riddance to cable news. I will miss you for nostalgia purposes only once you finally do succumb. But it'll probably always be around in some level.
But this like Zoomers can't
read. Right. Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
Or make a phone call is a common complaint I hear too.
Well,
but I think that's
kind of
silly.
said that about us too.
Yeah, I think that's also true of millennials.
And I still will avoid it.
Yeah, true. If I can avoid it, I would.
Like the place that has like good reviews and good pictures on Google Maps is much more likely to get my patronage than the place that
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. If you have a nice form that I can fill out to come in and get things, the ball rolling, and not have to call and explain and what I'm trying to say over language I'm not sure about. But if I can see a checkbox and like, oh, okay, this is how this works, I understand, I'm much more likely to go with that. Oftentimes, probably to my, well, no, oftentimes, sometimes probably to
it
our
depends on what
detriments.
it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to talk to the expert
Yeah.
and be guided. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah, no, there's something else that I read that why I'm picking on this like can't write, can't read thing is like somebody made the comment that they watched some Zoomers like try to work with AI, and they were like, because everyone's like, they're going to be AI native. This generation is going to be AI native, and how amazing that's going to be for them. And, you know, the world is uneven and unfair. So yeah, for some of them, but it seems that they're, at least according to this other comment that I'd come across, it was like, there's a bunch of them that can't read and write. Like they can't really express ideas. And if they can't express them, then they're not going to get AI to do the output will not be what it ought to be.
That seems weird to me that the generation would be poor at expressing ideas through like the written language because they spend so much time texting, right? Or like, I don't know. Or I mean, the SAT now is a writing portion that they never used to have. Like they have to go through, anybody that's going and taking the SATs has to, I would think, get some schools I would think are specifically gearing students with writing skills to pass those tests. So that's kind of surprises me.
Are colleges going back to looking at the SATs, or are we still in the regime that doesn't look at
Well,
test scores?
I mean, how long has that regime been in place? Only 3-4 years? Like where they kind of went out the window. Like I think that's more likely.
I'm a little tongue in cheek here, but
yeah,
still,
yeah. No, that's fair. That's true because
because it was
looking at SAT score was somehow racist or something, right? I forget why we stopped caring. I don't know.
A very imperfect, but the best meritocratic system that we had.
Yeah, I don't know. So it surprises me that because they're more sober, so they should at least be able to express their ideas more clearly without the haze of Jack Daniels.
Hangovers.
Yeah. So,
dear AI, I had too much añejo last night. Please help me with
one too many kombuchas and.
That's funny. I'm using ourselves to death over here.
Sorry, Zoomers, and I'm not. I like you. I'm not trying to pick on you. It's funny. It's funny the differences that we have, but with us and the generation behind us. It really shocks me how much of a steep decline it has been in like the data I see in alcohol sales. It's like a 6 to 8-fold decline. Yeah, it's
very, very real.
Yeah, it's just a cliff for these brands and these companies that I don't know. It's gonna be a weird decade in the beverage industry coming up as this, unless something comes up to like dramatically reverse course, like we're going to probably see consolidation. I don't know.
That's a good point. It's funny. It's like, Lewis Hamilton just got into tequila. Clooney made all his money in tequila. Some big names like right on the tail end here, making big money. And then Diageo is going to be the bag holder or something.
The Hawk Tuah girl is going to launch a vodka.
Yeah, but her demographic's still drinking, I think. Drinking and having sex.
Yeah.
Whereas the others are not doing either of this.
Yeah, she'll have the niche of that demographic that's still partaking. But yeah, like the numbers I've seen are like, I need to go back and look at like the scale at which they are, but talking like average spend per person per capita, essentially per year on adult beverages. It's like a 70% decline. I don't.
Well, and they don't even have to risk driving drunk. They just get Ubers.
Maybe it's no fun without the risk. I don't know. No, I don't know. It's unusual.
It does wonder. I think risk here is like the interesting word. I have a hard time believing that it's all just like health conscious. There's something like, it's alcohol and it is sex and it is so many other things. Like, are they just not going to leave home? Like, has the risk profile gone to near zero? Is this the generation that like sees 10% of them like be wildly successful because they're the only ones with any sort of appetite, and the rest of them are just like barely skating along? Or like the normal distribution get weirdly shaped?
That's an interesting question, because if it's a generational shift in risk tolerance, let's say, amongst certain activities, yeah, because it, like, again,
other than COVID, there's like no hardship. Yeah. We came of career age during the great financial crisis.
Yeah, and COVID ultimately, like, the job market ended up being really good, so it wasn't like they were having a hard time finding jobs.
Yeah,
right.
Their social life was hard.
Their social life was hard.
That I'll give them. But I don't know that there was true hardship or struggle almost anywhere. We came of life in a great financial crisis, and, it was people our age over in Iraq and Afghanistan. Absolute numbers were small there, but still, it was our generation doing that.
I was thinking about this recently. It's funny this came up. Somebody, one of my millennial friends, made a comment about how it seems like we've had a once-in-a-lifetime crisis that we've experienced every so many years as a millennial. And I was like,
yeah,
it does feel like that. But I was trying to think about what those crises actually were. I mean, so obviously the pandemic, the GFC, I guess 9/11, and then the
9/11 for sure, and the aftermath of war.
Yeah,
.com
bust into that economy, which that was kind of we saw it and it impacted the people in our lives. I think it didn't impact me directly.
I felt like I saw it on the news. I felt completely and not impacted.
Yeah, I remember like all the adults in my life at the time because I was a teenager.
Yeah. But then the great financial crisis was different. Like Indiana just lost its entire economy. It was done.
Yeah.
Like there were no jobs.
Yeah.
Period. I had to leave. We had to leave the state in order to like make a living.
Yeah.
Because maybe that's probably putting it a little harshly, but my life wouldn't be what it was at my state.
No, that's I think the truth for a lot of people that ended up going to other climes. The opportunities just weren't as dense for sure. And then that also set a lot of people back on the homeownership path initially, right? Millennials tended to own homes later in their life than I think the generations before. I don't know how the Zoomers are doing on that front. I suspect they're doing a little better, but I'm not certain.
Okay, let's go back. So we're picking, I know it may sound like we're picking on the Zoomers. I'm trying to understand.
Me too. And
I'm also trying to relate to my own lived experience, which was sitting in a ratty office in Indiana for the couple of years I worked there after school, and then the offices in New York City that I worked in, and reading article after article after article after article about how millennials are lazy, do nothing, unworthy people who shouldn't be in the workplace.
Yeah, I remember those.
And how's that going?
How in the corporate workplace, I don't feel like I see as many millennials as I do other generations often. Is that weird? No, that's maybe not fair. I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I feel like the level at my level where I just got to, it's all Xers at least, right? I'm the only
at your level.
At my level, yeah. And then below me, before moving up, it was a mix of millennials, I guess. So maybe, yeah, we're still up and coming. We're hitting our 40s and getting into the upper management points.
I'm on the older end of millennials, and I'm just 41. So I'd say if 43 is pretty much the top. And especially in the corporate world, you kind of reach your 45 to 55 is sort of like the power stride. Like you've either made it and you made it by then, or you've been pushed out into some other sort of arena.
Yeah. I think you've found a niche.
Or you've chosen a different arena.
You've chosen a niche, and I really like designing this widget, and I'm just going to sit here and design different iterations of this widget for the rest of my career because somebody needs to design the hinge on the plane, and I'm going to do that.
Yeah, you forge a different path, right? I think right now, I would be just moving into a place of more power if I would have stayed on track, but I left. Yeah, I parachuted out.
Yeah,
and so it's just a different thing now.
That's true. It is interesting. And I'm watching this upcoming generation with fascination because their experience is different than ours in so many ways. And it's interesting to see how their lives are in what ways and what different choices they're making. I don't want to shit on them because I hated people shitting on millennials. So Zoomers, keep rocking. If people are crapping on you, just get used to it. It's just the generational thing. It's every generation before us has jumped on us.
It is true. It's always happened and it will continue to happen.
Yeah.
But it's almost, there's a bit of rite of passage involved there
There is,
too.
yeah. It's a little hazing. You have to go through the generational hazing to be accepted in the workplace. Like, all right, now you're finally welcome, I guess.
And if you're going to walk around with some sort of victim mindset, woe is me, the sky is falling, then you will get jettisoned out of the organization.
Yeah. But I suspect most of you are tough enough to realize that anyway and know that soul is just full of our bullshit that we like to sit and sip on every morning. But yeah, it's interesting. Like, again, just the shifts and how they're spending their free time, what they're doing with it. Like, obviously more health conscious than any generation before them has been to, since health consciousness was a thing in a way. Because there was a point in time where health consciousness just really wasn't so much a thing, and it didn't matter. Like, obesity wasn't as big of an issue. But then, like, what? I'd say pre-20s, maybe. That wasn't really 30s, 1930s. And then after World War II, mass food processing. I mean, we already had, tobacco's been around for thousands of years, so you can't blame that on a time frame there. But like health, like it moved into the consciousness of people and being health conscious. And like, I think this generation is like the most amplified version of doing the things that are best for their body to improve their likelihood at physical longevity, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, it'd be interesting to see. The cohort kind of has its its features and the conclusions that we can attempt to draw off of those changes as people move through life.
Also, I imagine that the younger generation has been more vocal about seeking out mental health services. Like, I imagine if you were to look at the percentage of
fault, I think.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's gone too far is
Yes.
in a way.
Like the self-diagnosis, everyone thinks they are hurt when in fact they're just human.
Ooh, that's a good line, Dan.
Okay.
No, because it's true. Because sometimes so much of being human is that nature of
getting back up.
Yeah, and like also then the nature of like always being kind of paranoid because like there's risks and we survived because we look out for risks and you feel like, oh, well, if I'm constantly feeling like I'm at danger, then I have this anxiety. Yeah, somewhat, but also some of that's just your natural system saying, don't forget, things can go wrong.
You're alive. Yeah.
Of course, there are absolutely people that suffer from anxiety disorders that have
100%.
need help.
I don't want to take away from the real thing. It's just more like the self-diagnosed
and using it as like a badge of honor
or a crutch.
A badge of honor in a way. I feel like there's maybe it's just a small but probably loud vocal group that
probably
it's like trying to get glory from being the most hurt and the most sympathy. I don't know. It's people that seek out sympathy and attention, and then you see that and you're like, there's a lot of people doing this, and it's just a handful, but they're loud.
What suffering has this generation gone through, right? Like I feel like that's when people are forged, is in times of being pushed beyond a self-imposed boundary, that you learn more about yourself as you push through those sorts of things.
Yeah. So maybe the suffering that they've experienced is being too sheltered, and being protected by helicopter parents that kept them out of any harm's way. And
the coddling of the American mind.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jonathan Haidt's work is pretty clear on some of this stuff, and he'd be the guy I would cite on that.
Yeah. Interesting.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's an extremely important thing for humans to do, is to realize how much more strength they have than the default download tells them they have. But the only way to go find that out is through suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And best to do it in some sort of way that is under some control. Like great financial crisis, I wouldn't recommend it. Great Depression, I wouldn't recommend it. But like an outdoor adventure where you and 3 other kids your age and 1 adult or 2 adult, whatever, like have to go like scale rock walls and take risks. That sounds good.
Yeah, break a wrist. If you break a wrist, that's an acceptable risk you probably took.
Yeah.
My
or starting something when you're 17 and you haven't even applied for college yet, and then you fail at 18 and a half and you're 1 year late going into college. So that's cool. You're going to be better for it. Just little things like that where, 100% there are people doing these things. But I think about it as a parent, right? I think about rites of passage. I think about Richard Reeves and of Boys and Men. I think about female empowerment and how, what are we going, and suffering. Think about suffering, because I think it is integral to the lived experience. And to suffer when you're older and less capable or less flexible, less plastic, like that's not nearly as much fun. And to be able to find your boundaries and to find your strength ahead of being 18, I think was kind of something I wish I had more of.
I think everybody wishes that in hindsight, because we all were just scared kids going through it, Dan, every single one of us. And we were guessing and listening to advice that was coming our way and picking and choosing which of it we wanted to listen to or believe in. And if it resonated with us, we'd tend to follow it. If not, you'd tend to ignore it, and probably ignored more good advice than I listened to, honestly, in hindsight. But,
yeah, probably. Going back to all these articles I read about my generation being full of shitbags, right? Like how much does that infect the psyche, and then
yeah, I didn't want to listen.
true first.
I didn't want to listen because you didn't, your opinion of me was such shit anyway, so why bother listening to what you have to say? Rebellious. I think millennials are a little more rebellious than the generation that followed, but we'll see how that, if that plays out. I mean, the gig economy kind of sprung up around our youth and coming of age, really, because of why? Because people needed jobs and the internet was becoming a thing, and people didn't want to go to the office 9 to 5.
Usually with the GFC and events like it, there is a spawn of entrepreneurial activity.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, like, even outside of the entrepreneurial, well, I guess in a way you could say
I put freelancing in there.
Yeah, freelancing is entrepreneurial. You're doing it on your own hours, on your own schedule, not at the, I can get behind that.
I don't get picky around people choosing between a lifestyle business, a freelancing business, and an Uber, right? Like if you're out on your own and you eat what you kill, no, it's for that.
Fair enough. Well, anything else we got to say about Zoomers and millennials? I feel like I need to go think about this some more.
I do too. Yeah, I'm genuinely curious, in part because my own lived experience. That
yeah.
It's like no one was asking questions of us, it seemed. I just read horrible things about me all the time.
And what other trends, like big demo shifts, are happening between the millennial and the Zoomers or Gen Z? Other than alcohol,
other than them all
needing to refigure out their business model.
Disappearance of TikTok.
Yeah, something like that.
They all will grow up to hate the United States government now.
Sorry, repeat that.
They all will grow up to hate the United States government now.
Will they? Even I wonder what percentage of that generation is, even like a percentage of our generation that's on Twitter is actually still relatively small, 25% maybe.
Yeah, but I think anything that requires no reading whatsoever, and it's like dopamine every 0.75 seconds. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that's going to be pretty popular, and the higher end of the Twitter requires reading and being a little bit on the higher end of the rung in terms of patience and ability to teach the algorithm.
Yeah, especially since they expanded it to above 140 characters. But yeah, that's another
bias in the way that I use it. Like I'm sure I know that there's a lot of trash there too.
Yeah, there's tons of trash anywhere. If you want to find it, if you want trash in your feed, you can find trash in your feed. It's that's what you're seeking out. The feed will give it to you. You just have to give it the right.
I would argue like TikTok, the format is trash.
That's true. The format.
I'm not saying that there's no good I'm not saying there's no good material. There is good material there, but I would say the format is trash. It is meant to rot your brain.
Yes.
And that's not even a comment on whether the CCP has control of information.
Exactly. I don't mind what's going on with that thing going away, at least temporarily. We'll see. This all could change by the next time we talk. After
it very much could. Yeah.
The inauguration's happening as we speak, and in 3 days there's supposed to be 100, edicts or whatever, executive orders coming out in the first day, right? So let's see what drops today.
Radical acceptance.
That's actually one of the edicts. Is he's outlawed radical acceptance. You have to be pissed off about everything.
I can just go to jail now.
Yeah. I don't think that will end up long-term impacting that generation's view of government. I think what's much more likely to impact that generation's view of government is the next 4 years of grift that we're about to see. Like we're in grifter's paradise, we're already seeing as Coolio once sang, I think, right?
Yeah, the Trump coin, I think, is all you need to know about how this whole thing works. It's personal enrichment up and down.
Uh-huh. It sure shit is. And it is.
But I try to be open-minded and listen to the other side, and they say the exact same thing and have cogent arguments about the other side.
Mhm.
And then I just become my parents who are like, man, it's the government. It's always been that way.
Ultimately, it just leads to apathy, and apathy leads to letting shit just get worse, right? I guess.
That's what I don't like about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because then you're like, whatever, and then you stop paying attention even more so, and then it allows even more shit to happen and fly by. And yeah, there's something
You know,
poetic about that Trump coin coming out right before his inauguration, hours after Gary Gensler walks out of the SEC for the last time, and like we're just gonna have 4 years of much less regulation. I think in many ways that can be a good thing because sometimes
in
we're
many ways, yes.
overregulated. I just worry about a little bit about level of grifting that's going to be happening, and that will be on the rise. And so I think everybody just needs to keep their head on a swivel, but we'll get through it.
Okay. We're going to go non-judgmental.
Yeah.
We're going to go non-positional.
Okay.
We're just going to look at what we believe the future looks like. And one of the things I told someone recently was, I don't know if I'm looking forward to this or not, but I believe it to be true. That the incoming administration, we've already seen a flavor of it once before.
Mm-hmm.
And they tend to telegraph what they want to do. And therefore, you can make money ahead of, or like post telegraph
Before
prior
action,
to, yeah.
implementation.
So crypto being like the clearest thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we are only setting an inauguration day. Would you participate if you had a clear vision on it doesn't matter what it is, it just was very clear to you that the administration is moving in X direction and you can play that through instrument Y? Are you,
I
are
think
you watching
so.
these
I
things?
think it depending upon the situation, yes, as long as I have no desire to run out and buy Trump coin. But maybe increasing my crypto exposure on specifically Bitcoin is a good idea from a couple 100 basis points to a few 100 basis points more. I don't know. Because that does seem likely to, with, as we've discussed previously, Jay Powell's possible mandate to start stocking up on Bitcoin. But again, we think that might already come through other means. It's not going to actually impact pricing so much.
Yeah.
But it does create maybe a floor on some of that so that it helps de-risk it, which gets other people in, which then and creates that behavioral psychology spiral, right? Of people like seeing it happening and then it manifesting itself as more people start to believe and partaking in the mania. That's going to happen probably several times in the next 4 years, right? I'd say a couple times a year at least. Probably have good 2-3 shots a year if you can find them and feel confident enough and passionate enough. Yeah, that's outside of crypto. I need to start thinking about what those other opportunities are because they're going to be abound.
And
it's probably as much as I say today, you're going to have to start listening to what Trump's saying a little more closely than I have been in the last.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think part of the reason why I was unable to participate last time, I had my head in the sand and I didn't want to. I mean, a good portion of his term, I was not even in country.
Yeah.
And the other part of it, I didn't have a job. So there wasn't a lot of money to be made. But I feel like with here and accepting reality as it is, kind of looking at like no excuses, right? Head in the sand doesn't do any good. Might as well try to make some money and do something with it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't view them as like ill-begotten gains or anything like that, but maybe there's something I can do with them, or maybe I don't know, maybe it's like enough money that I can change my life and like teach a college course part-time, or I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Things that I have on my mind that like, I would love the flexibility to do that. I don't have it right now.
Mm-hmm.
But some sort of giving back. I want to.
No, I hear you.
That
I could see that being fun. A fun thing to do. Yeah, that's a good goal for what you want to do. If you're going to make money off of all this bullshit, then at least be higher minded about why you're making the money, right? Okay, I want to do it to improve my life so I can do this thing. I like that a lot.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think we live and work in this little box and we talk together and publish it. Hopefully that reaches some people.
Mm-hmm.
I just think about, what was it that I said? Like you can't save souls in an empty church.
Yeah.
That's one of my things for 2025. It's like, how can I put myself out there more? And I know I'll, be connected with people that don't like me or what I have to say or something that'll be part of it. And then I think about like more direct connection, whether there's some sort of like mentorship of youth in my town or teaching at the community college or something.
Go volunteer at Minds Matter. They have that in Denver.
Minds Matter.
I've been thinking about doing that here in Houston. Mindsmatter.org. They pair adult volunteers up with like high potential youths from struggling schools in the area.
Disadvantaged backgrounds.
Yeah, disadvantaged backgrounds, trying to help them get a leg up on, like, it's like a weekly tutoring thing. They have a guest. I've gone and I spoke to the local group here a couple of times. One of my coworkers is a regular volunteer, and I've gone a couple of times to speak.
How was that experience for you?
I really enjoyed it. It was really fulfilling, and something I think, one thing that might be one of my things I want to do this year is getting into doing that more regularly. Specifically, if I could, I don't know, like you have to sign up for a commitment to like actually then be with that student for a period of multiple years. And that's been a little intimidating, but like they have some other things where you can come in and regularly like offer to come in and do courses or present on topics where you might feel confident enough to speak in. They'll help provide you with some basic content and you can flesh it out. And
say more about the intimidating longer relationship.
Well, because signing up for that is not in my ethos, because, I'm not a parent. And so I'm like, oh, if I sign up for this 2-3 year relationship, like, then what if in 2 years I want to move, or, in feeling, which, I guess it is what it is.
I feel like that is the thing that you can always use to not do it.
That's fair. And probably need to get over that.
That's coming from someone who's, and that I'm giving you that because I've used that on myself
too much in
my life. In part because we were extremely mobile for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I've never been mobile, really. I have been, but
I've moved cities once.
Yeah. So like, it's like, I'm not going anywhere likely. Like, that's a stupid reason. Probably.
Don't call it stupid. But it's a reason.
Yeah. It's a reason.
Is the reason valid?
Yeah. That's fair. Is the reason valid? And I think there's something intimidating about signing up like to do something for 3 years with somebody, and like, what if the kid, I hate them. I'm like, I gotta go.
I'm sure they have mechanisms for that.
It's like, this kid just is a dweeb. I can't take it. No, I mean, give me with the jock,
Poor
man.
Guy. This kid doesn't like sci-fi. I can't work with this.
Yeah, exactly. Like that, the potential personality clash, and then having to be, with that for a long period of time, I think is also intimidating as a potential, something that would worry me when I was thinking about, have been thinking about doing this. But I think it's something that it's on my brain, and I at least need to go do some more sessions of volunteering and doing offering to deliver some classes. But something like that, I think, someday I want to do more of that more regularly. I think it's good for the
someday, like starting February.
I love it.
I'm pushing you.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. Yeah, let me reach out to Laura, see if she's still around there. Think about that.
Since you've already got you already know someone that's sort
of. Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, and they do it. They meet 5 minutes away from my house. It's nice. It's not even, I don't have to go far.
That's nice. Mine would probably be a 40-minute drive.
Yeah. Good part of living near downtown, where all the disprivileged students are.
Yeah, it's true. Capital flight. Look, this guy looks like I'm going to look like this guy in 20 years. And I'll take that. He looks good. No, this is cool. It's got, I'm on the Colorado chapter here, and it says 1 in 4 Colorado students will go to a 4-year college, and 97% of top jobs in Colorado that pay a living wage require education after high school.
Man, there's some words in there doing a lot of heavy lifting. Because that's implying education after high school is not the same as
only college.
That to say 97% require some education after, sure, okay. That could be getting...
the plumbers in my area are making more money than I am.
Yeah. Exactly. And that there's some education, like apprenticeship training, that you have to go through for that I would consider to be, but education. Or like
trade school and stuff should be included in that, in my opinion. We need all types of people doing all types of jobs.
Yeah, there's some verbiage there that's doing a lot of heavy lifting to imply that, I don't know, when I hear stuff worded like that, it makes me feel like they're
single-minded.
Yeah. I think their mission's still good, but it's like...
Yes, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that would be something, an experience I have had in the past where I enjoyed, my time doing that, and I would recommend it to others that wanted to get into it themselves, because it was rewarding. And it's not for everybody, right? If being around teens and preteens stresses you out, I get that. And maybe that's not your idea of a good, rewarding thing, but there are programs out there that are looking for volunteers, and
How do they get their students? Is it opt-in?
yes, they worked with a number of different area schools, and it was like an opt-in program. Kids could sign up for it. I think they had to be invited, I think, as well. It wasn't students can apply. They're supposed to be 10th graders when they're first joining. They can be nominated by a teacher or like a guidance counselor, I think, and they can apply themselves. And I think there are, as I understood it, some base level of requirements. Like if students apply, they want them to get a note from a teacher or guidance counselor that, basically supporting their entry, not just taking every single person. Although I'm sure, I bet they don't do much filtering. I bet if the students are willing to apply, they're probably getting in to the program for the most part, as long, but yeah, they pair I think a mentor up with one or two students for a period of several years, like 10th to 12th grade. And then they have like a weekly lecture series that goes on, and then after that they do other activities one-on-one with the mentors. So like I said, it's
That's
interesting.
cool.
Yeah, it's an interesting program, and good things in the world out there if you want to partake.
There's lots of them. They're just hard to find. I shouldn't say that. I've had a difficult time like honing in on which one or two to try to hook horns with.
Yeah, and it's also, yeah, the time commitment of something like that. Also, it's like, oh, I have to do this on every Saturday for 26 Saturdays a year. It's like, oh, what did I just sign up for?
Yeah.
Something like that. That can also be part of the reticence of wanting to go too deep into it. Can seem like a lot. And if you're busy in life, maybe, I don't know. It's hard. It's, I don't know. I need to do something like that though. I think it would.
I think it would be fulfilling.
Yeah, I do as well. I think I would get joy out of it. I know I would. It's just scary.
Yeah, I know you would.
It's scary. It's scary though, Dan. It's scary.
Yeah, but going back to like suffering and pushing boundaries and going further than you believe you can go. This is one of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so that's my ideas around that since you said.
Yeah. Cool. I've bookmarked to that. That might be in my future at some point. Gonna have to get through some years of kids stuff first though, because that is it's a big time gift, and right now, like, that is the thing I do not have.
Absolutely. And that's,
I was listening to my brother talk about how like my dad used to explain something to him, and he was like, sometimes I have money, sometimes I have time. I rarely have both. So I have to be judicious with like how I give, what I give, when I give.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm in the season of life. I don't really have any money, but I definitely don't have time right now. But someday,
one day,
hopefully I have both.
Exactly. That's the dream. To have both.
It's the dream. Yeah.
That's the dream.
But again, like you reach the dream, it's like you don't just wallow in it. And I think you atrophy at that point. So like it's important to be going, I was saying like here's on one of their pages, I was like, oh, there's a guy, that's what I'm gonna look like in 20 years. And I say that tongue in cheek, but I also say that seriously. In 20 years, I hope that it's time and money is no problem, and I can go spend, like, they're gonna be telling me to go home because I'm spending too much time at their little get together. Because like, kids are in college and whatever. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I do. I think I do.
All right, Sean.
Here's to a time when we have more time in the future. Until then, I think we've taken up enough time today. And thank you all for tuning in. We hope there was something of value and inspiration for you.
Yeah, and let us hear it if you have comments.
Absolutely. See you all next time.